She was 18 years old. She had $1 in her pocket, and she was about to open a door that had been closed for 70 years. The wind came in hard off the Atlantic that morning. Salt air, heather, the smell of rain that hadn't fallen yet. Imani stood on the grassy path in the west of Ireland, her suitcase tipped sideways in the mud, and looked up at the stone cottage on the hill. The roof was half gone. The chimney had collapsed on one side. The door hung crooked on rusted iron hinges held shut by nothing but habit. This was hers now. She had paid €1 for it, about $1.10 in American money. 2 weeks ago, she had woken up on her 18th birthday and found her suitcase packed and waiting by the front door of her parents' house in Boston. No goodbye, no explanation, just a note, just $300 in an envelope, and a door that wouldn't open anymore. She had nowhere to go, no family who would have her, no school that would take her without her parents' signature. So she came here, to a ruin on the edge of the world. What she didn't know, what nobody knew, was that beneath the hearthstone of that crumbling cottage, sealed away since before the Second World War, someone had been waiting for her. For 70 years, by name. But to understand how a girl from Boston ended up on a hill in County Mayo with a key to a door that had been closed since 1953, you have to go back. Back to a brownstone in Brookline. Back to the smell of a goosey soup and the sound of a woman laughing in a language Imani only half understood. Back to a grandmother who once said something Imani didn't believe at the time. Rings know things the grandmother had said. Rings know where they need to go. Imani Adesanya was born in Boston on a Tuesday in October. Her father, Obinna, was a software engineer at a firm near Kendall Square. Her mother, Chinello, was a registered nurse at Beth Israel. They had come to America in the late 1990s with 2 suitcases in a dream that had a very specific shape. Stable income, good schools, a daughter who would become a doctor or a lawyer or at the very least an engineer like her father. Imani was their only child. She was quiet. She read everything she could find. By the time she was 7, she had already filled 3 notebooks with poems she would not show anyone, except her grandmother. Adeora came every year from Lagos. Always in the autumn when the leaves on Beacon Street turned the color of fire. She would arrive at Logan Airport with 3 suitcases, one full of clothes, one full of food her granddaughter could not get in America, and one full of books. Igbo poetry, English poetry, the letters of Edna O'Brien. A worn copy of Seamus Heaney that she had read so many times the spine had cracked open like a question. Adora would stay for a month, sometimes 2. She would fill the brownstone in Brookline with the smell of jollof rice and the sound of her own laughter, which was the kind of laughter that made other people laugh just by hearing it. She taught Imani how to braid her own hair, how to cook a goosey soup, how to read clouds, and how to listen. When Imani was 12, Adora gave her the ring. It was a small gold band with a tiny turquoise stone dull from age. Adeora had worn it on her own right index finger since 1962, the year she had married Imani's grandfather in a small church in Onitsha. "This one is for you now," Adora had said. They were sitting on the back porch in late October. The sky was bruised pink. The neighbor's cat was watching them through the fence. "Why me?" "Because rings know things on Malicha. They know where they need to go." "That doesn't make any sense, Grandma." Adeora had smiled, slid the ring onto Imani's finger. It fit. Of course it fit. "It will," she had said. "One day this little ring is going to travel somewhere you don't expect. And you are going to remember what I told you. And you are going to know." Imani had laughed. She had been 12 years old. She had not known what her grandmother meant. She would not know until she was 18. Adora died on a Thursday in February. Imani was 14. The phone call came at 4:17 in the morning. Her mother answered it. Her mother did not cry. Her mother just sat down on the kitchen floor, still holding the phone, and breathed in a way Imani had never heard her breathe before. The funeral was in Lagos. Imani did not go. Her parents said it was too expensive, too disruptive to her schooling. Her mother had a shift she could not get covered. Her father had a project at work. Imani had understood the reasons. She had nodded. She had not argued. But something inside her broke that week, and she would not know for years that it had broken at all. She kept the ring on her finger. She touched it when she was nervous. She touched it when she was writing. She touched it at night in the dark, when the house was quiet and her parents were asleep, and she could pretend just for a moment that her grandmother was still in the next room. Rings know things. Rings know where they need to go. By the time she was 16, the war in the Brookline brownstone was already underway, even though no one called it a war. Imani's grades were excellent. She kept them excellent because excellent grades were the only currency that bought her any peace. But every spare hour, every minute, her parents were not watching, she wrote. Poems, stories, fragments of overheard conversation, lines that came to her on the bus and would not leave her until she had written them down. She filled notebook after notebook. Cheap composition books from CVS, 3 for $5. The leather journal her grandmother had sent her from Lagos for her 13th birthday, that one she saved for the poems she could not bear to lose. She published in her school's literary magazine. She won a regional poetry contest when she was 16. The prize was $200 and a small bronze medal in a velvet box. Her parents did not come to the ceremony. They had a wedding to attend, a cousin's wedding in New Jersey. They could not get out of it. Imani had nodded. Imani had said it was fine. When she came home with the medal, her mother had looked at it on the kitchen table and said, "That is very nice, Omalacha. Now, have you started your applications for the pre-med summer programs?" That was the night Imani decided. She did not say anything to her parents. She did not announce it. She just sat down at her laptop after they had gone to bed, and she filled out the application to the writing program at a small but prestigious university in New England. She used her own essays, her own poems. She paid the application fee with the $200 from the regional contest. She did not tell anyone. She got in. The acceptance letter came on a Thursday in April. Her father got the mail that day. He opened the letter at the kitchen counter while Imani was upstairs doing her homework. He read it. He set it down. He did not call her. He waited until her mother got home. The conversation that night happened in Igbo. Imani only understood half of it, but she understood enough. Her mother used a word that meant disappointment. Her father used a word that meant waste. They went back and forth across the kitchen for almost an hour, their voices rising and falling, and Imani sat on the stairs in the dark and listened to her future being decided in a language she had never been allowed to fully learn. When they called her down, her mother was sitting at the kitchen table. Her father was standing by the window. "You will not be attending this program," her mother said. Imani had known. She had known the moment she heard her father's footsteps in the hallway that afternoon. But hearing it out loud was different. "I worked for it," she said. "You worked for the wrong thing. It's a real program, Mama. It's accredited. It is poetry, Imani." So we did not come to America for poetry. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Imani had ever heard in her life. Her mother said other things after that. Things that were harder, things that Imani would try to forget but would not be able to. Her father did not say very much. He just stood by the window and looked at the lights on Beacon Street and let her mother do the cutting. The conversation ended with her mother saying very quietly, "If you want to be a writer, you can be a writer somewhere else, not on our money, not in our house." Imani did not argue. She had learned by the age of 16 that arguing with her parents was like arguing with a stone wall. The wall does not move. You only hurt your hands. She went up to her room. She sat on the edge of her bed. She touched her grandmother's ring, and she wrote in her leather journal for 2 hours straight. She did not know at the time what she was writing. Years later, she would look back at that page and see that she had written the same line 11 times. "I am not what they want me to be. I am not what they want me to be. I am not what they want me to be." She graduated from high school in June. The ceremony was in the gymnasium. Her parents came. Her father took photographs. Her mother cried the way mothers do at graduations, and for a moment, looking at her mother in the audience with a tissue pressed to her eyes, Imani thought maybe everything was going to be okay. It was not going to be okay. 2 weeks later, on the morning of her 18th birthday, she came downstairs at 6:30 and found her suitcase packed and standing by the front door. The handle was up. The wheels were locked. The whole thing was sitting there like it had been waiting. On top of the suitcase, there was a note. She stared at the suitcase for a long time before she picked up the note. The note was written on the back of a recipe card, her mother's handwriting, small, careful, the way her mother wrote when she was trying not to cry. Imani, we love you, but we cannot watch you make these choices. When you are ready to be serious about your life, you know where to find us. Mama and Papa, there was an envelope underneath the note. Inside the envelope, there were $300 in cash, mostly 20s. Imani read the note, then she read it again. Her father was at work, her mother was upstairs. The house was very quiet, the kind of quiet that has been planned. She picked up the envelope. She picked up the note. She picked up the suitcase. She stood in the foyer of the brownstone in Brookline for almost a full minute. She looked at the staircase. She looked at the door of the living room where her father's reading chair was. She looked at the kitchen where her mother had taught her to make jollof rice when she was 9 years old. She did not call out. She did not say goodbye. She opened the front door. She walked out. She did not look back. What Imani did not know, what she would not discover for another 4 hours, was that her mother had also packed something else into the suitcase, something her mother had not mentioned in the note, something her mother had hesitated over for a long time before deciding finally to put it in. It was the Bible, Ada Ora's Bible. The old leather-bound King James that Ada Ora had carried with her on every visit to Boston for 30 years. The one with the cracked spine and the underlined verses and the photographs tucked between the pages. The one that smelled, even after 4 years, faintly like her grandmother's perfume. After Adora had died, Chinello had taken the Bible from the guest room and put it on the highest shelf of her own closet. She had never explained why. She had never offered it to Imani. Imani had assumed it had been thrown away. It had not been thrown away. It had been waiting. And now it was in her suitcase wrapped in a clean white pillowcase tucked between her sweaters. Imani spent that first day walking, just walking. She did not know where she was going. She rolled the suitcase down Beacon Street, then onto Commonwealth Avenue, then onto the bridge, and by the time the sun was high, she was standing in the middle of Boston Common, watching the ducks with no plan and no idea what to do next. She found a youth hostel near North Station. $35 a night, bunk beds, communal bathroom. The man at the front desk took one look at her face and gave her the bottom bunk in a 6-person room, the one closest to the window. She unpacked her suitcase that evening, sitting cross-legged on the thin mattress. And that was when she found the Bible. She held it for a long time. She did not open it that first night. She just held it. She pressed her face against the worn leather cover and breathed in, and for one full second she could smell her grandmother again. Then she put the Bible under her pillow, and she lay down. And she did not cry, and she did not sleep. The next day she applied for jobs, 6 jobs, coffee shop, bookstore, 2 restaurants, a grocery store, a pharmacy. Nobody called her back. The day after that, she called the writing program. The admissions counselor was a kind woman named Maria who listened to Imani's story for 15 minutes and then said very gently, "Sweetheart, without your parents' financial information on the FAFSA, there is nothing I can do, not for this kind of tuition." Imani had thanked her. She had hung up. She had sat on the bunk and stared at the wall. She had $210 left. She had 3 more nights paid for at the hostel. After that, nothing. That third night, she opened the Bible. It was almost midnight. The other women in her bunk room were asleep. The window was open. Down on Causeway Street, a siren was passing. Imani sat up. She pulled the Bible out from under her pillow. She turned on the small reading light above her bed. There was a folded piece of paper sticking out of the top of the book. She had not noticed it the first night. It was old, yellowed at the edges, folded once neatly into a square. Imani opened it. It was her grandmother's handwriting. The date at the top was October 2019. Adeora had been dead for 4 years, which meant she had written this letter and tucked it into her own Bible 6 years before she died. Imani's hands were shaking before she had even read the first line. My dear Imani, if you are reading this, then something has happened that I prayed would not happen. Or perhaps something has happened that I always knew would happen, and I am writing to you because I am old, and old women are always preparing for things. You are 18 years old now. You are alone, or you feel alone, or you are reading this for some other reason that I cannot guess from where I am sitting in Lagos in 2019. Whatever the reason, listen. Open this Bible to page 47. There is a verse there that I have underlined. Read it twice. Read it a third time if you need to. That verse is for you, from me, from your grandmother who is not in the next room anymore. I want to tell you something else, something your mother does not know, something I have never told anyone. When I was a young woman before I married your grandfather, I lived in New York for 3 years, from 1955 to 1958. I worked as a cleaner at St. Vincent's Hospital, and at night I took classes to become a nurse. I was very poor, I was very lonely, and I was very far from home. In my second year, I made a friend. She was an Irish nurse, a widow much older than me. She had lost her husband in the war. She had no children. She was kind to me when nobody else was, and she taught me English the way a sister would teach a sister. Her name was Kawimhe O'Brien. You will not know how to pronounce it. It is Kiva, like key with a soft V. She told me once that she had a cottage in Ireland, a stone cottage on an island called Achill, on the very far west coast of County Mayo. She had left it behind when her husband died. She said she could not bear to live in it without him. But she told me this. She said, if you ever have a granddaughter out of Aura and that granddaughter ever needs a place to go, send her to Achill. The cottage will know her. The cottage will keep her safe. I laughed when she said it. I thought it was just an old woman's dream. But Kaimhe was a woman who knew things, the way some women know things, the way I know things now, which is why I am writing this letter and tucking it into a Bible that I am going to leave for you in case you ever need it. If you are reading this, go to Ireland. Find the cottage. It is yours. It has been yours since before you were born. I love you, my granddaughter. I love you across the ocean. I love you across the years. I love you across the life I do not get to see you live. Go and find what is waiting. Your grandma Adora Imani read the letter 3 times. Then she set it down, very carefully, as if it might break. She opened the Bible to page 47. There was a verse underlined in faded blue ink. The book of Ruth, chapter 1, verse 16. Whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. In the margin, in her grandmother's handwriting, Ada Ora for Imani, 2019. You are never alone. Imani put the Bible down on her lap. She put her hands over her face, and for the first time in 2 weeks, she let herself cry. Not the small tears of self-pity, not the angry tears of the kitchen table, the other kind, the kind that comes from somewhere very deep, somewhere a person does not know they have until something cracks it open. She cried until the woman in the top bunk above her stirred. She put a hand over her mouth. She kept crying, quietly. When she stopped, the sky outside the window was beginning to turn gray. She wiped her face with the corner of the pillowcase. She picked up her grandmother's letter. She read it one more time more slowly. Kawimhe O'Brien, Achill Island, County Mayo. She picked up her laptop. She typed those words into the search bar. What came up first was a tourism page, photographs of green hills and gray ocean, a village called Achill Sound, beaches, cliffs. What came up next on the second page of results was a small listing on the County Mayo Council's website. Crumbling stone cottage, half acre, 8 Hill Sound vicinity, abandoned since 1953. Owner of record Kwame O'Brien deceased. Listed price €1. Imani stared at the screen. Her hands had stopped shaking. Her tears had stopped. Something else was happening now. Something quieter. A feeling like a door opening in a room she did not know was inside her. She read the listing 4 times. She made sure of the name. Kwame O'Brien, the same Irish nurse who had told a young Nigerian woman in a hospital in New York in the year 1956 that one day there might be a granddaughter who needed a place to go. Imani closed the laptop. She lay back on the bunk. She looked up at the underside of the mattress above her. She held her grandmother's ring against her cheek. She whispered into the dark the way she had not whispered anything to her grandmother in 4 years. "Okay, Grandma." Okay. She bought the plane ticket the next morning. It was a standby fare. Boston to Dublin, $247. It left her with $183 in a backpack, in a leather journal, in a Bible that was older than she was. She cleaned out her share of the hostel room. She tipped the woman at the front desk $5. She walked to South Station and she took a bus to the airport and she checked in for her flight with hands that should have been trembling, but were not. She felt for the first time in 2 weeks that she was moving in the right direction, whatever that meant. The flight left at 8:45 in the evening. By the time the plane lifted off, the lights of Boston were already small below her. She watched them disappear. The city where she had been born. The city where her parents were sitting down to dinner at that exact moment, probably without speaking. The city she did not know if she would ever come back to. She did not feel sad. She did not feel free. She felt the way Ruth must have felt walking out of Moab. The plane landed in Dublin at 6:30 in the morning. Imani had slept maybe 40 minutes. The airport was loud. The accents were unfamiliar. The coffee was different. She bought a small map of Ireland from a kiosk and a sandwich from a kiosk next to that, and she ate the sandwich on a bench by the gate while she figured out how to get to County Mayo. Bus to the train station. Train to Westport. 3 hours and 20 minutes across the green middle of the country, with the rain starting just outside the city limits and continuing the whole way. Imani pressed her face against the window. She watched Ireland go by. Stone walls, sheep, round green hills cut by streams, small white houses with red doors, a horse in a field standing perfectly still with a crow on its back. She had never seen anything so green in her life. She thought this is what my grandmother saw too, when she came here. Except her grandmother had never come to Ireland. Her grandmother had only known about Ireland through Kwame, through stories, through the shape of a country in another woman's mouth. But somehow sitting on the train, Imani felt like her grandmother was sitting beside her, looking at the same hills, seeing the same horses. That was the strange part. She did not feel alone. In Westport, she got off the train. She found the small local bus to 8 Hill Sound. The bus left twice a day. She had to wait an hour and 20 minutes. She sat on a bench in the bus shelter and watched a small black dog trot down the cobblestones with what looked like a sausage in its mouth. The bus came. She got on. The driver was a man with a red beard who told her when she paid her fare, "You're a long way from home, love." "I think I'm closer than I've been in a while," Imani said. The driver had looked at her in the rearview mirror. He had not said anything else. The bus dropped her at Achill Sound. The road there was narrow and gray and smelled of the sea. There was a parish church, a pub with the name Mulligan's painted on the window in fading green letters, a post office the size of a closet, and set back from the road a small stone building with a hand-painted sign that read in 2 languages, Parish Council Office. Imani went in. The woman behind the desk was in her early 60s, curly gray hair, reading glasses on a silver chain. A photograph of a smiling boy on her desk maybe a grandson, a small frame picture of the Sacred Heart of Jesus on the wall behind her. She looked up when Imani came in. Then she looked again. You're a bit lost, are you, Pitt? I'm looking for the parish clerk. That's me, CO for a Walsh. What can I do for you? Imani put her backpack down. She pulled out the printed listing she had brought from Boston. I'm here for this property. CO for Walsh took the printout. She put on her reading glasses. She read the listing. She read the listing again. She looked up at Imani. The O'Brien place. Kawimhe O'Brien. Pet, where are you from? Boston, Easton, Massachusetts. You came all the way from Boston? Yes. For a Euro cottage? Yes. CO for a Walsh did not say anything for a long moment. She just looked at Imani over the top of her reading glasses. She had the kind of face that has seen everything and is mostly not surprised by any of it. But something in her face was surprised now. I have been the parish clerk for 22 years, she said. And in 22 years, no one has ever come from Boston for a Euro cottage. The Euro cottages, they go to retirees from England, sometimes to Germans. Once I had a Frenchman, but never an American girl. Never an American girl as young as you. I have a reason. Do you now? Yes. Siofer waited. Imani opened her mouth. She closed it. She did not know how to explain. She did not know how to say, my grandmother knew the woman who used to live there. And they made a kind of promise to each other in 1956. And now I am here because that promise is still alive somehow. So she said instead, my grandmother knew her. Siofer Walsh's expression did not change, but something behind her eyes did. Kawimhe O'Brien. Yes, your grandmother knew Kawimhe O'Brien in New York. Siofer was quiet for a long moment. Then she said very softly, Pet, sit down. Imani sat in the wooden chair across from the desk. Siofra pulled out a form. She uncapped a pen. She did not look at the form. She looked at Imani. Tell me your grandmother's name. Adaora. Daora Adesanya. Adaora, Siofra said. The word came out of her mouth slowly the way a word comes out when it has been sitting in a person's mouth for a long time and is finally being spoken. Did you know her? Imani asked. No, Pet. I never met her. Then how came he wrote letters? Imani felt the blood go out of her hands. Kawimhe O'Brien wrote letters back to this parish, Chauffeur said. For 25 years from New York. She wrote to the priest. She wrote to her old neighbors. And in some of those letters, the ones the old folk passed around for years and years, she mentioned a Nigerian girl she'd met at the hospital. A young woman she'd grown to love like a sister. A young woman who had gone back to Africa, to a country called Nigeria where Kawimhe could not follow. Siofra paused. She put the pen down. In the very last letter she ever wrote to anyone in this parish, 1976, I think it was, she mentioned that woman by name. She said she had a feeling, a very strong feeling, that somewhere someday a girl would come from across the sea looking for her cottage. She said when that girl came, the parish was to do everything in its power to help her. Imani could not speak. Siofra Walsh smiled. A small, tired, beautiful smile. I think that was you, Pet. Take a breath. I said take a breath. Imani took a breath. Siofra slid €1 out of her own coin purse. She put it on the desk. She slid it across to Imani's side, then back to her own side, then back to Imani's like a small ceremony only she knew the steps to. Don't worry about the euro, I'll cover it. You keep your money for food. I have $183. That'll do for a few weeks if you're careful. She filled out the form. She had Imani sign it. She copied out the registration number. She stamped it twice with 2 different stamps. She folded the carbon copy and slid it into an envelope. Welcome to the parish, Miss Adesanya. Thank you. There's something else you should know. What? Siofra Walsh hesitated just a moment. Then she said, there is a priest in this parish, Father Ryrie. He's 70 now. He took over from old Father Brendan when Brendan died in 2010. There has been a letter sitting in the parish safe for a long, long time, Pete. It was Father Brendan's. Now it's Father Rary's. It is for you. I think you should let me telephone him. A letter from me. A letter that has been waiting for you. Yes. Imani stared at her. Siofra. I just got here. Pet Siofra Walsh said, she's been waiting longer than you've been alive. The walk from the parish office to the cottage was 3 miles. Siofra had drawn her a small map on the back of her receipt. Up the coast road, past the old whitewashed Connolly farm, through the gate with the broken latch, across the field where the sheep usually were, up the rise. There it would be. There would be no signs. There would be no neighbors close enough to call out to. The path was grass for the last half-mile. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still gray and the wind off the Atlantic was steady and cold. Imani walked. Her suitcase rolled behind her on the uneven ground, catching on every stone. She had her backpack on her shoulders. The Bible was inside the backpack, against her spine like a hand pressing gently into her back. The sheep watched her pass. A magpie called from a blackthorn hedge. The wind smelled of salt and heather, and something sweeter that she could not name gorse. She would learn later the small yellow flower that grew everywhere on the western coast. She climbed the rise, and the cottage was there. She stopped walking. She just stood and looked. It was smaller than she had imagined, about 25 feet long, maybe 15 feet wide. A single rectangular building of a rough gray fieldstone, the mortar crumbling in places, the stones themselves still straight. The roof was old slate, patched with moss, missing tiles in the middle where a section had partially fallen in. A tall stone chimney rose from the center. One side of it collapsed, exposing the old clay flue. 2 small square windows, a heavy oak front door hanging slightly open on rusted hinges, held there by habit and not by any working hardware. Around the cottage, the wild remnants of what had once been a garden. Roses had grown into thorny masses along the south wall. Foxgloves stood in spikes of purple and white. A sagging wooden gate leaned against a stone fence. And beyond the cottage, in every direction, the great rolling green hills of West Mayo stretched away to the line where the land met the gray Atlantic and the Atlantic met the sky. Imani stood there for a long time. Her grandmother's ring was warm on her finger. She walked finally to the door. She put her hand on the rough wood. She pushed. The door groaned. It moved, slowly as if it had not moved in a very long time and had to remember how. It opened. Inside was one room. Just one. A single rectangle. Flagstone floor, gray and cool, covered in a thick dust of fallen slate and old ash. The walls were the rough interior side of the same fieldstones, irregular and beautiful. The ceiling was open to the rafters, exposing the dark wooden beams that had held the roof in place for over a century and a half. And at the far end of the room, taking up almost the entire north wall, the hearth. It was enormous. A great stone fireplace, big enough for a grown man to stand inside, with an old iron crane still fixed to one inner wall for hanging cooking pots above the fire. The hearthstones above the opening were blackened by more than 100 years of cooking smoke. A rough wooden mantle had once held dishes or photographs, but now held only dust in the soft skeleton of a long-dead spider. Imani walked across the flagstone floor. Slowly, each step echoed. She knelt. She placed her hand palm flat on the great hearthstone in front of the fireplace. It was a single piece of gray stone, maybe 5 feet wide and 3 feet deep. It was cold, so cold it pulled the warmth out of her hand on contact. But there was something else too, a feeling. Or maybe she was making it up. Maybe she was so tired and so full of strangeness that she was inventing things. But she felt the stone somehow recognize her. She would never be able to explain it later. Not to anyone. Not to Siofra Walsh. Not even to the priest, who was already at that moment walking across the field toward her with a yellowed envelope in his coat pocket. But she felt it. The hearthstone knew her. She bent closer. She brushed away a thick crust of ash with her fingertips. She saw then what she had not seen at first, that there was a small gap along the edge of the hearthstone where it met the surrounding flagstones. Not a crack, a deliberate gap. The stone was not mortared in. It was sitting on something. She pressed down on the edge. The stone rocked, just slightly. Imani's heart began to beat very fast. She got up. She stepped back. She did not know what to do next. She needed something. A bar. A lever. There had been a piece of iron in the garden, half buried in the rose bushes that might. Behind her, a man's voice said, "You have a visitor, child." Imani turned. She had not heard him come up the path. She had not heard the door creak. He was standing in the doorway of the cottage with the gray afternoon light behind him. A small silhouette of a man leaning slightly on a wooden cane, his free hand holding something flat against his coat. He stepped inside. He was a priest. She could see the white collar at his throat. He was old, maybe 70. His hair was the color of pewter. His eyes were very blue. His face was the face of a man who had baptized hundreds of babies and buried hundreds of old people, and had stopped being surprised by anything except perhaps the sight of an 18-year-old American girl standing in a cottage that had been empty for 70 years. "Father Ryrie," he said. He held out a hand that did not quite stop trembling. "I'm sorry to startle you. Siofra rang me from the office. She said I should come quickly. I have something I was given a long time ago by my predecessor. Old Father Brendan, God rest him. He passed it to me on his deathbed in 2010. He said it was the most important thing he had to give. He said I was to keep it safe until the right person came." The priest reached into his coat. He pulled out an envelope. It was old. The paper was the color of weak tea. The corners were soft. There was a single line of writing on the front in faded brown ink in a woman's careful hand. "For the one who comes." Father Ryrie held it out. Kalimhe O'Brien sent this from New York in 1976, 2 years before she died. She sent it with strict instructions. It was to be kept in the parish safe. It was to be given to the first person who dared to spend more than one night inside this cottage. Imani took the envelope. It was light, almost weightless. She turned it over in her hands. "Father Shaw, I know. I know, child." She looked up at him. His blue eyes were wet. "She has been waiting for you," Father Ryrie said, "for 70 years. She did not know your name. She did not know your face, but she knew you. She wrote to old Brendan once and said, and I remember the line because Brendan repeated it to me, she said the cottage will recognize her, and so will you." Imani's hands were shaking now. She held the envelope. She looked down at the writing on the front. "For the one who comes." Behind her, the great cold hearthstone waited. Beneath it, sealed in a chamber that had been closed since 1939, three things waited: a tin box, a leather-bound ledger, a wooden rosary, and one small ring with a single blue stone set in old gold that had been placed in that tin box by a young Irish woman the night before her husband had gone off to the war that would kill him, a ring that had been given 20 years later to a young Nigerian woman in the basement of a hospital in New York City, a ring that had crossed an ocean, had lived in Lagos for 68 years, had come back finally on the finger of a granddaughter who did not yet know it was the same ring. The ring did not know it had come home, but it would. Imani looked down at the envelope in her hands. She did not open it. Not yet. Not while the priest was watching, not while the wind was rising outside, and the gray afternoon light was beginning very slowly to thicken into evening. She held it. She breathed. She felt her grandmother's voice somewhere very far away, saying again the things she had said when she was 12 years old. Rings know things. Rings know where they need to go. And so Imani thought, do envelopes. So do cottages. So perhaps do girls. She looked up at Father Ryrie. "Thank you," she said. Her voice did not shake. She did not know how it didn't. The priest nodded. He turned. He walked slowly with his cane back toward the door of the cottage. He paused at the threshold. "There's stew in my housekeeper's kitchen," he said without turning around, "and a spare bedroom in the parish house. Siofra said you have $183. That won't see you through the week, child." "Father, read your letter, then come find me. The road back is the same road forward. You can't miss it." He stepped out. The door swung gently shut behind him. Imani was alone in the cottage. She was alone with the hearth, with the envelope, with the ring on her right index finger that she did not yet know had a sister, with the Bible in her backpack, with 70 years of waiting that was not yet finished, but was finally beginning to end. She walked to the mantel. She set the envelope down on the rough wooden shelf. She placed her hand over it. She closed her eyes. She thought of her grandmother in the kitchen in Brookline stirring jollof rice laughing. She thought of a young Irish nurse in New York in 1956, teaching a young Nigerian woman the English word for mercy. She thought of a stone cottage on a hill waiting in the rain for 70 years. She thought of her mother, of her father, of the brownstone she had left. She thought of the line her grandmother had underlined in a Bible 6 years before she died. "Whither thou goest, I will go." Imani opened her eyes. She picked up the envelope. She slid her thumb under the flap. The seal, after 70 years, gave way without a fight. The letter was 4 pages long. The paper was thin, onion skin, the kind of paper old people used to use for letters that had to travel a long way. It crackled when she unfolded it. The handwriting was the same careful, sloping hand from the front of the envelope. Brown ink, faded, beautiful. The date at the top was the 3rd of April, 1976. Imani sat down on the cold flagstone floor in front of the hearth. She did not feel the cold. She did not feel anything except the pulse in her thumb against the paper. She read, "To the one who comes, I do not know your name. I am sitting at a small table in an apartment in Brooklyn, New York. It is raining outside. I am 78 years old. My doctor tells me my heart is going to stop sometime in the next 2 years, and I think he is being generous. I have been writing this letter in my head for 37 years. I am Amhe O'Brien. I was born in 1898 in the parish of Achill, Sound County, Mayo, on the western edge of Ireland. I lived in the cottage you are sitting in for 16 years of my married life. I left it in 1953 after my husband Cathal died in the war, and our children, who I will explain in a moment, did not come into the world. Yes, child, there were no children. We tried for years. The Lord did not see fit. I made my peace with that in time, the way a woman makes peace with anything she cannot change. But I want you to understand, the cottage you are in was built by my husband's grandfather in 1862. The hearthstone you may already be looking at was set into the floor in 1864. 4 generations of O'Brien women cooked at that fire. 4 generations of O'Brien women hid things underneath that stone the way our mothers taught us, in case the soldiers came, or the landlords came, or the famine came again, the way it had come before. There is a chamber under that stone. You may have already found it. You may not have. It does not matter. The chamber is yours now. In 1939, the night before my Cathal left for the war, we placed everything we had of value into that chamber. The jewelry of my husband's mother and grandmother, the savings of our marriage, a small leather book in which I had begun that very week to write down the things I could not say out loud. Cathal said to me, "Kimi, we will come back and we will dig it up together and we will laugh that we ever bothered to hide it." Cathal did not come back. I came back, once in 1942, once in 1944, and the last time in 1953 when I came back to close the door of the cottage for the last time and go to America, where I had a cousin who said she could find me work. Each time I came back, I added to the chamber. I added my pension. I added the last of Cathal's army money. I added small things, a rosary that had been my mother's, a locket with our wedding photograph inside. I did not take any of it out, not one ring, not one shilling. Do you want to know why? Because something inside me knew, child. Something inside me knew that those things were not for me. They were for someone else. Someone who would come later. Someone who would need them more. I do not believe in the kind of foolish dreams the village priest used to scold us about. I am a practical woman. I was a nurse for 30 years. I have seen people die in every way a person can die. I do not believe in fairy tales, but I believe in this. I believe that some hands are meant to give, and some hands are meant to receive. And the time between the giving and the receiving is sometimes very long, sometimes longer than a single life. So I will give you what you should have. Lift the stone, take what is underneath, use it well. There is something else I must tell you, something I have not told anyone in this parish. Something I am only telling you because you are the one who came. In 1956, 3 years after I closed the cottage door for the last time, I was working as a nurse at St. Vincent's Hospital in New York City. A young woman came to work in our ward as a cleaner. She was Nigerian. She was 22 years old. She was studying at night to become a nurse herself. Her name was Ada Ora. I loved her, child. I do not know if you understand what I mean by that. I had no children. I had no sisters who were still living. I was an old woman in a cold city, and a young African girl with the most beautiful laugh I had ever heard came into my life and was kind to me when I did not expect kindness, and I loved her. She left in 1958 to go back to Lagos. She was going home to marry a man she had been writing to for 3 years. She was going to have her own life, her own children, her own granddaughter someday. The night before she left, I gave her something. A small ring. A blue stone in old gold. The ring my husband Cathal placed on my finger the day he asked me to marry him in 1937, in a field of yellow gorse on the cliffs above Keem Bay. She tried to refuse it. I told her she had to take it. I told her I have no granddaughter to give it to. You will. Someday. And when that someday comes, give it to her. Tell her it came from a woman in Ireland who loved her grandmother. Tell her it was waiting for her. I do not know if Adaora kept the ring. I do not know if she had a granddaughter. I do not know if you, the one who is reading this letter right now, are that granddaughter. But I have a feeling, the same feeling I had when I was a young woman the night before Cathal went to the war, that I should put my mother's pearls beneath the stone. The same feeling I had in 1953 that I should not take them out. The same feeling I have right now sitting at this table in Brooklyn with the rain outside and my heart finishing its last few thousand beats. Some hands are meant to give. Some hands are meant to receive. If you are her, welcome. If you are not welcome anyway, the cottage is yours. The fire is yours. Light it. Yours in the long line of women who come and go. Kawimhe O'Brien Amani sat very still on the flagstone floor. She did not breathe for a long time. She did not move. Outside, the wind shifted. A gull called. She set the letter down. Carefully. The way you set down a sleeping child. Then she stood. She walked across the room. She walked out the front door of the cottage. She walked through the wild garden. She walked to the stone wall at the edge of the property. She stopped there. She looked out at the gray Atlantic. She put her hands over her face. She did not cry. She laughed. A small laugh, then a bigger one. Then a laugh that was almost a sham, and almost a prayer, and almost the laugh her grandmother used to laugh in the kitchen in Brookline, when something delighted her so much she could not contain it. A young Nigerian woman, a small blue ring, a cottage that knew her name. Imani stood at the wall for a long time. The wind tugged at her hair. She let it. She thought of her grandmother sliding a ring onto her finger when she was 12 years old. She thought of her grandmother saying rings know things and laughing at her own seriousness. She thought of every birthday card her grandmother had ever sent her. Every voicemail she had been too lazy to call back when she was 13, and her grandmother was alive in Lagos, and there was still time. Rings know things. Rings know where they need to go. She turned. She walked back to the cottage. She found the iron bar in the rose bushes, half buried exactly where she had seen it earlier. She wedged it under the edge of the hearthstone. She put her weight on the other end. She pushed. The stone lifted. It was heavy, so heavy. She thought for a moment that her arms were going to fail, that she was going to drop the lever and the stone would slam back down, and she would have to walk 3 miles back to Siofra and ask for help. But the stone lifted. It rose maybe 6 inches, then a foot. Then she had it tipped up on edge, and she was holding it there, her arms shaking, her breath sharp in her chest. She looked down. Underneath the hearthstone was a chamber, not a natural gap, a chamber, a small rectangular room cut into the floor of the cottage lined with flat stones on all sides, perhaps 2 feet wide and 3 feet long and 2 feet deep. Built, deliberate, mortared in, the way a person builds a place to keep something safe. And at the bottom of the chamber, sitting in the dust of 70 years, a bundle, wrapped in oilcloth, tied with heavy string. Imani eased the hearthstone back down slowly, slowly, until it rested on the floor beside the chamber. Her arms were trembling. Her shoulders ached. She did not care. She knelt down. She reached into the chamber. The oilcloth was thick, black with age, but intact. She lifted the bundle out. It was heavier than it looked. She carried it to the wooden mantel above the fire. She set it down. Her hands were shaking. She steadied them. She steadied them by remembering the line her grandmother had underlined in a Bible 6 years before she died. "Whither thou goest, I will go." She untied the string. She unfolded the oilcloth. There were 4 things inside: a tin box roughly the size of a hardcover book, a small leather-bound ledger no bigger than her palm, a wooden rosary dark with the oil of 1,000 prayers, and a small cloth pouch drawn shut with yarn. Imani set them out on the mantel in a row. She opened the tin box first. Inside were small parcels wrapped in wax paper. She unwrapped them one at a time. Her hands were no longer shaking. She had moved into the strange calm that comes when a person knows somehow that what is happening is too big for ordinary feelings. A pair of garnet earrings, old gold filigree, the garnets the color of dried blood, a thin gold chain with a small cross pendant, a locket also gold on a longer chain. She opened it with her fingernail. Inside, a tiny black and white photograph of a young couple, the man with dark hair and a soft mouth, the woman in a pale dress with flowers in her hair. They were not smiling. People did not smile in old photographs, but they looked at the camera the way you look at someone you trust completely. A pearl necklace, 3 strands, yellow with age, and at the bottom of the tin, a small ring. A single blue stone, set in old gold. Imani picked it up. She held it between her thumb and forefinger. She brought it close to her face. She held it next to her grandmother's turquoise ring on her right index finger. She had seen this ring before, in a black and white photograph, the only photograph her grandmother had ever shown her of the years in New York. A photograph of a young Nigerian woman in a white nurse's uniform standing on the steps of a hospital with a small ring on her right hand that caught the light like a single blue spark. Imani had asked when she was small what the ring was. Her grandmother had only said, "A friend gave it to me when I was your mother's age. A friend in America." Imani had not asked again, because at 12 years old, you do not ask the second question. She closed her hand around the small blue ring. She closed her eyes. She felt for the second time that day the strange certainty that some part of her grandmother was very close to her. Not in a ghostly way, not in a frightening way, in the way a hand on your shoulder is close to you. Steady, quiet. There. She opened her eyes. She slid the blue ring onto her right ring finger. It fit. Of course it fit. She held her hand up. 2 rings, one turquoise, one blue. 2 women who had loved her, one who had raised her, one who had never met her. A line drawn in gold across 70 years. She turned to the leather ledger next. The cover was soft from handling. The pages were thick. The first entry was dated September of 1939. Cathal and I are leaving Achill Sound tonight. He has joined up with the British Army. Foolish man that he is, but he says he cannot sit still while the world burns. I will work in a hospital in Birmingham. I do not know if we will come back. I am hiding this ledger and our savings beneath the hearthstone where my own grandmother used to hide things during the troubles of her own time. If we return, we will reclaim it. If we do not return, let it remain hidden until it is needed by whoever finds it. The hearth holds what the heart cannot carry. Imani read the line 3 times. The hearth holds what the heart cannot carry. She closed the ledger. She held it against her chest. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about the things her grandmother had not been able to carry through the years. She thought about her own heart, about what it had been carrying for 2 weeks, about what it was perhaps now beginning to set down. The cottage was darker than it had been when Father Ryrie had left. The afternoon light was thinning. She would need to go back to the parish house soon. She would need to eat something and she would need to sleep. But first she let herself sit on the flagstone floor of a cottage in County Mayo with a tin of treasure beside her and a leather ledger in her lap, and she let herself think about the woman who had written those words in 1939. She let herself imagine. She let herself see. A young Irish woman, 41 years old, long brown hair pinned at the back of her neck, standing in this very room on a September evening in 1939, with a husband she loved in a war on the other side of the channel, and a small leather book in her hand. Writing the line, folding the oilcloth, lifting the stone, with her own husband holding the lever, the two of them grunting and laughing and trying not to drop it on each other's feet. Cathal would have been 35. A tall man, slim with thick dark hair and the kind of face that smiled before it spoke. He would have kissed his wife in this very room before they walked out together. He would have looked at the door. He would have said something the way men say things when they are about to leave for a war, too brief, too rough, hiding all the softness underneath. He would not come home. He would die in March of 1945 on a road in Germany on a morning none of his comrades would later be able to remember clearly. And claim he would come back alone in 1953 to close the door of this cottage for the last time, to stand in this very spot, to look at the hearthstone she had not lifted since 1944, to decide with the absolute clarity of grief that she would not take what was beneath it, that she would leave it for someone else, for someone she did not know. For a girl from Boston who would not be born for another 65 years. Imani opened her eyes. She set the ledger down. She picked up the small cloth pouch. She loosened the yarn. She tipped it over her palm. Bills, old bills, folded carefully, bound in twine. Some were Irish punts from before the euro. Some were British pounds from before the war. There was a small bundle of American dollars pre-1960. The green of them faded soft. She did not count them, not then. She set the pouch back on the mantel. She turned and looked at the hearth. At the chamber she had opened. She thought, okay, Koime, I am here, I came. She stood up. Her knees ached. Her shoulders ached. She had not eaten since the airport sandwich in Dublin more than 12 hours ago. She wrapped the 4 objects back into the oilcloth. She tied the string. She placed the bundle on the mantel where it would be safe. She walked to the door of the cottage. She looked back once at the hearth. She closed the door behind her. She walked the 3-mile back to the parish house in the falling dark. Father Ryrie's housekeeper, a woman named Brid, fed her stew and brown bread and a glass of warm milk and asked no questions. Imani slept in the spare bedroom that night under a heavy wool blanket. She slept the way a person sleeps when they have been waiting their whole life to put something down, deeply, without dreams. In the morning, she came downstairs to find a woman she did not know sitting at the kitchen table. The woman was old, 80 maybe, 81, white hair pinned at the nape, a blue cardigan, hands folded around a teacup. A small round face like an apple that had been left in the sun too long, but in a good way, the way old apples become sweeter. Father Ryrie was at the stove frying something that smelled like rashers. Imani, he said without turning around. This is Ethna Gallagher. She walked over from her farm to see you. She said she would not eat my breakfast until she had laid eyes on you. He's not joking, the old woman said. I told him I'd refuse the tea. Imani stood in the doorway. Her hair was uncombed. Her sweatshirt was wrinkled. She had not put on her shoes. Hello, she said. Hello, child. The old woman's eyes were watering. She had not yet said on anything else, but her eyes were watering. Sit down, pet, Ethna said. Sit down before I start in. I'm going to start in, and when I start in, you'll want to be sitting. Amani sat. Father Ryrie slid a plate in front of her, eggs, rashers, black pudding, a wedge of buttered brown bread. He set down a cup of tea. He kissed the top of Ethna's head, a small, fond daily thing, and said, I'll leave you to it, ladies. I have a parish to run. He left. He shut the door behind him. Ethna Gallagher reached across the table. She took Amani's hand. Her fingers were warm and dry and very thin. The hand of a woman who had milked cows for 60 years and was not afraid of anyone. I was 8 years old, Ethna said. The morning Kaime O'Brien came to my mother's kitchen for the last time. Imani did not speak. It was the spring of 1953, April. The wind was up. My mother was making bread. I remember because the loaf was still rising on the windowsill. Kaime came through the door without knocking. She had a bag in her hand. She had a coat on. She said, Mary, I am leaving today. The boat goes out of Cove on Friday. I will not be back. Ethna paused. She squeezed Amani's hand. My mother said, but who will look after the cottage? And Kimhi said, the cottage will look after itself until the right person comes. Imani's throat had closed. My mother said what right person? Kimhi said, I do not know. A woman, a young woman. She will come. She will not be from here. Ethna's voice was steady, but her face was wet. My mother said, Carrie, you are talking nonsense. You are tired. You are leaving. Of course you are talking nonsense. And Koimhe smiled. I will never forget that smile, child, as long as I live. And she said, Mary, I am not talking nonsense. I am telling you what is going to happen. And when it happens, when she comes, I want you to remember. Treat her like a daughter. Ethna stopped. She let Imani breathe. My mother died in 1971. She told me the story when I was 26. She made me promise to remember it. She said, Ethna, if you live long enough, a girl will come. You will know her when she comes. You will treat her like your own. Ethna's eyes did not leave Imani's face. I have lived long enough. Imani's tears came finally quietly without sound. Ethna did not let go of her hand. I have waited 73 years for you, child, she said. And here you are. Eat your breakfast. Then I am going to walk you back to the cottage. And we are going to sit there together. And I am going to tell you everything I know about the woman who left this island for the last time on a Friday morning in April of 1953. And you are going to tell me everything about your grandmother. And then we are going to have lunch. Imani could not speak. Eat, Ethna said. Imani ate. The next morning, she took the bus to Galway with 3 pieces of jewelry wrapped in a clean handkerchief in her backpack. The locket, the garnet earrings, the pearl necklace. She walked into a small antique shop on Key Street, the one Father Ryrie had told her about, run by a woman named Aine, who had been buying old jewelry from West of Ireland estates for 30 years. Aine put on her loupe. She looked at the locket for a long time. She looked at the earrings. She lifted the pearls toward the window light. Where did you get these, love? They came with a house I just bought. You bought a house in Mayo at 18 for €1. Annie looked at her over the loop. Did you now? Yes. Annie lowered the loop. She set down the jewelry. She named a number. €8,500. Imani did not blink. She did not bargain. She said yes. She watched Anya count out the bills. She put them in an envelope. She took the bus back to Westport with €8,500 and a sandwich she had bought at a petrol station, and a feeling in her chest that was somewhere between elation and grief. The next morning, she took the train to Dublin with the small cloth pouch of old bills. A numismatist on Henry Street took 30 minutes to lay every bill out, identify every series check, every signature against a fat reference book. He named a number, €3,200. She said yes. She rode the train back to Westport with a backpack containing €11,700 in cash, an unreturned phone, and a heart that was beginning to understand very slowly that the woman who had hidden these things in 1939 had hidden them for her. She hired Fergal Carney that Friday. He was 65, a stonemason, hands like roots. He came up to the cottage in his old white pickup truck, walked around the building twice, ran his palm along the south wall, climbed up onto the lower edge of the slate roof and tested two beams with his weight. He came down. He took off his cap. He scratched the back of his neck. "She's sound, this one." "Are you sure?" "The walls are perfect. They were laid by a man who knew what he was doing. The roof needs work. The chimney needs rebuilding at the top. But the bones, child, the bones are there." "How long?" 4 months, give or take. 3 if the weather is kind, 5 if it is not. How much? He named a number that was less than half of what she had. "I'll teach you to mix lime mortar," he said. "I'll teach you to lay stone. You can work with us. You'll save on labor, and you'll learn something." "Why would you teach me?" Fergal Carney looked at her for a long time. "Because Ethne Gallagher told me to," he said. "And no man in this parish says no to Ethne Gallagher, not unless he wants his ears boxed." Imani laughed. It was the first time she had laughed in a very long time. She started work the following Monday. She learned to mix lime mortar in a wide steel tub. She learned how to feel when the consistency was right too wet, and it would slump too dry and it would crumble. She learned how to lift a stone, how to choose its face, how to set it, how to wedge it, how to wait for a beam of late afternoon light to slant across a wall and tell you by its shadow whether your wall was true. Her hands blistered. The blisters broke. The blisters scabbed over. The scabs became calluses. She wrote at night, by candlelight, then by oil lamp, once Fergal got the wiring sorted in the parish house. She filled 3 notebooks in the first month. Poems mostly, some stories. A long letter she would not send to her mother. She made friends with Saoirse Byrne, the young librarian in Westport. On the Tuesday afternoon, she went into the public library to look up the O'Brien family records. Saoirse was 25, long red hair in a single thick braid, glasses slightly too big for her face, a laugh that was loud and unembarrassed. "You're the American girl with the cottage. How did you buy, pet? Everyone in 3 counties that knows about you by now." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry. It's the most exciting thing that has happened in West Mayo since the lights went out in 2017. They became friends in the way that 2 young women who are starved for someone their own age become friends. Quickly, without ceremony. Saoirse helped Imani find census records, parish baptisms, the marriage notice from 1937, the Army death notice from March of 1945. Saoirse came up to the cottage on Saturdays and brought sandwiches and sat on the stone wall while Imani and Fergal worked. "You should eat more," Saoirse said one afternoon. "You are getting too thin." "I am eating." "You are eating like a woman who is in love with a building." Imani had laughed. It had not been entirely untrue. The storm came in the 3rd week of October. The forecasters had been talking about it for 2 days. Atlantic depression, winds gusting to 90. Rainfall in inches, not millimeters. Ethne Gallagher rang the parish house twice on Tuesday morning to make sure Imani had moved the unfinished slate inside. Imani had moved the slate inside. She had tied down everything that could be tied. She had checked the temporary tarpaulin Fergal had stretched across the half-rebuilt section of the roof. It was not enough. The storm hit at 4 in the morning on Wednesday. Imani woke in the parish house bedroom to the sound of the wind. It was not a wind she recognized. It was a wind that sounded like a train. She got out of bed. She pulled on her boots. She pulled on the heavy oilskin coat Father Ryrie had given her, and she ran out into the dark. She ran the 3 miles in the rain. Her boots slipped on the wet grass. She fell twice and got up. She did not know what she was running toward. She only knew she had to get there. When she came over the rise in the gray screaming dawn, she stopped. The tarpaulin was gone. Half the new slate was gone. The chimney top, which Fairhall had finished only 2 days before, had collapsed onto the south side of the roof, and the south side of the roof had collapsed into the kitchen, and the rain was pouring through the open ceiling onto the flagstones below. Imani stood in the wind. She did not cry. She did not scream. She did not move. She stood, and she looked, and she let the rain hit her face, and she let everything inside her come undone slowly in a way she had not let it come undone in 18 years of being Imani Adesanya. 3 months of work, 11,700 euro, a roof, a chimney, a wall, gone. She thought for the first time since she had walked out of the brownstone in Brookline on the morning of her 18th birthday, maybe I should not have come. Maybe my mother was right. Maybe this is what poetry costs. She heard the sound of an engine. She turned. Feargal Carney's white pickup was coming up the path. Behind it, 2 more trucks. Behind those, a green tractor. Behind the tractor, walking with a wool blanket over her head against the rain, came Ethna Gallagher. Saoirse Byrne was driving the second pickup. Father Ryrie was in the passenger seat of the third. Siofra Walsh was at the wheel of the tractor, somehow in a yellow rain slicker, looking like she had been driving tractors in storms her entire life. Behind Siofra in the trailer of the tractor were 6 men Imani did not know. Eamon Keneally from the pub, his 2 grown sons, a man with a chainsaw who turned out to be the postmaster's brother, another stonemason, a young man with a roll of tarpaulin under his arm. They came up the hill. They did not say very much. Feargal got out of the truck. He looked at the cottage. He looked at the sky. He turned to Imani and said, "Right, let's get to work." Feargal, none of that child. It's all gone. It's not all gone. It's just the roof. We'll fix the roof. I don't have any money left. We'll worry about money on Monday. He turned. He started giving orders. He started organizing. The men climbed up onto the broken edge of the roof. Saoirse and Siofra began carrying the soaked debris out of the kitchen. Ethna Gallagher came up to Imani in her wool blanket. She put her arms around Imani. She did not say anything. She just held her. Imani cried. She cried into the wool blanket of an 81-year-old Irish farmer who had been waiting for her since 1953. She cried for her grandmother, for her mother, for her father, for Kaimhe dead in Brooklyn in 1978, for Cathal dead on a road in Germany in 1945, for herself 18 years old alone in the rain. She cried until she could not cry anymore. Then she stopped. Then she went to work. The cottage was wine-tight again by sundown. 3 days later, she was in the kitchen of the parish house hanging up wet socks by the stove when Father Ryrie came in with the cordless phone in his hand. "For you, child." "Who is it?" He gave her a look she could not read. She took the phone. "Hello." There was a long pause. Then her mother's voice said very small, "Imani." Imani sat down. She sat down on the stone floor of the parish house kitchen with her back against the cabinets, and she held the cordless phone against her ear with both hands. "Mama, are you safe?" "I'm safe." There was a storm. The Boston paper said there was a storm in Mayo. They said, "I'm safe." The cottage, Imani. "The cottage is okay, Mama. There are people here. They came, She stopped. She did not know how to explain. There were no words for Ethna Gallagher walking up the hill in a rainstorm with a wool blanket over her head. There were no words for Siofra Walsh driving a tractor in a yellow slicker. There were no words for the way her grandmother's 2 rings had both somehow ended up on her hand. Her mother was breathing. Slowly, her mother was crying. Mama, your grandmother told me once, her mother said that you would go far. I did not understand what she meant. She said, my Imani, she will go very far. I thought she meant you would be a doctor. I thought her mother's voice broke. She did not finish. There was a long silence. Are you eating? Her mother finally said, yes. Are you warm? Yes, Imani. Yes, Mama. I do not understand any of this. I know, but I am trying. Imani closed her eyes. She did not say I miss you. She did not say I forgive you. She was not there yet. She did not know if she would ever be there, but she did say after a long pause, thank you for the Bible. There was a sound on the other end of the line, a small broken sound. Her mother had been waiting perhaps to know whether Imani had found it. Your grandmother told me to leave it in the suitcase. She said when the time comes, Chinelo leave the Bible in. Let her find it. You knew. I knew. Imani did not say anything else. She did not have to. She and her mother sat in silence on opposite sides of the Atlantic for almost a full minute. Then her mother said very softly, good night, Omalicha. Good night, Mama. She hung up. She stayed on the kitchen floor for a long time. She came back to the cottage the following Monday with the leather ledger in her bag. She had been carrying it everywhere. She had read most of it in the first week. The early entries from 1939, the visits in 1942 and 1944. The entry in 1945, Cathal is dead, killed in Germany in March. I will go on. The decision in 1953 to leave a kill for New York. But she had not finished it. She had been saving the last few pages, the way a person saves the last pages of a book they do not want to end. That night, by candlelight, sitting on the new flagstone hearth that Fouargal's son had reset, she read the last pages. The entries from New York, there were not many. Kaimhe had been a sparing writer in her later years. There was an entry from 1956 about working at St. Vincent's Hospital, an entry from 1957 about the cold of New York in February, an entry from 1962 about leaving the hospital to take care of an elderly cousin, and then near the back of the book on a page she had not reached before there was a final entry. It was dated December of 1958. The handwriting was different, smaller, faded, written in pencil instead of ink, as if Kawime had not been able to find her pen or had not wanted to make the entry official. Imani held the candle closer. She read, December 12, 1958. Adaora left this morning. Her ship sails for Lagos on Monday from Pier 88. She will not come back to America. She is going home to marry the man she has been writing to. His name is Chuka. He is a teacher. She showed me his picture, and he has a kind face, and I think he will be a good husband to her if any man can be a good husband to a woman like Adaora. Last night I gave her the ring. I gave her the small blue ring Cathal placed on my finger in 1937 in the field of yellow gorse on the cliffs above Keem. I have not taken it off in 21 years. I took it off last night. I gave it to her. She tried to refuse. I would not let her. I told her, Adaora, I have no granddaughter. You will. I can feel it. You will have a granddaughter, and that granddaughter will need things she cannot ask for, and you will give her this ring, and she will not understand why. And one day she will understand. She cried. She held it. She put it on her finger. She said she would never take it off. I said, take it off when the time comes. You will know. I said, and tell her when you give it to her that it came from a woman in Ireland who loved her grandmother. Tell her it was waiting for her. I said, tell her it knows where it needs to go. She laughed. She said in her language a word that I think means yes. She said it 3 times. We sat on the steps of the hospital for an hour. We did not say anything else. We could not. Some things cannot be said. They can only be lived. I will not see her again in this life, but I will see her granddaughter. I do not know how I know this, but I know this. Imani sat very still on the new flagstone hearth. She held the ledger. She brought her hand up. The 2 rings on her right hand caught the candlelight, the turquoise from her grandmother. The blue from a woman in 1958 on the steps of a hospital in New York who had no way of knowing what she was setting in motion. Two rings, two women, one promise that had taken 70 years to keep. Imani closed the ledger. She placed it on the mantel. She stood up. She walked to the cottage door. She opened it. The Atlantic wind came in. She stepped out into the dark. The stars were very bright over Achill that night. The Milky Way ran from one horizon to the other like a road. She tipped her head back. She let the cold air fill her lungs. She thought Grandma. Grandma, you knew. You knew the whole time. She did not need to say it out loud. The wind carried it for her. Out across the dark Atlantic, toward a small country very far away, where her grandmother was buried in red earth and where somewhere there was probably a wedding photograph from 1958 of a young woman smiling with a small blue ring shining on her hand. A ring that knew exactly where it was going. A ring that had finally arrived. The next morning, Imani walked the 2 miles up the coast road to Ethna Gallagher's farmhouse. It was the first cold morning of the year. The grass was silver with frost. Her breath came out white. She had the small blue ring on her right hand. The black and white photograph of her grandmother and the young nurse on the steps of St. Vincent's was tucked carefully inside her leather journal in her coat pocket. She had not slept. She had read the last entry of the ledger 6 times in the night. She had laid out the photograph beside the ring on the mantels. Do you see, Mom? She had stared at both until the candle had burned down to nothing and the dawn had come up gray and frozen over the Atlantic. She walked. She had something to give Ethne. She was not yet sure what. Ethna was outside when Imani came up the lane. She was wearing a heavy wool coat and rubber boots and a knit cap pulled low over her ears. She was throwing crusts to the chickens. 2 black and white sheep dogs sat on the cobbles behind her, watching the chickens with the polite patience of animals who have been told many times not to chase. She looked up. She saw Imani. She set down the bread bowl. She said, "You found something." "Yes. I'll put the kettle on." The kitchen was warm. There were dried herbs hanging from the rafters. There was a black cast iron stove in the corner that Ethne had clearly been feeding peat into since dawn. The kettle was already steaming. Ethne took down 2 cups from the dresser. She did not ask Imani what she wanted. She made strong tea with milk and 2 sugar and set it down in front of her without a word. She sat. She waited. Imani put the photograph on the table, face up. The young Nigerian woman in the white nurse's uniform, the small blue ring. Ethna picked it up. She held it close to her face. Her glasses were on a chain around her neck. She put them on. She studied the photograph for a long time. Then she set it down. Very gently, she did not speak. Imani took the small blue ring off her finger. She placed it on the table next to the photograph. Ethna picked up the ring. She held it in her palm. Her hand was trembling. Not with age, with something else. With the weight of a story she had been carrying for 60 years and had not been sure until this moment was a true story. She looked up. "This is the ring." Yes, this is the ring she wrote about. Kim Hee wrote about it to my mother in 1958, the last letter. Ethna stood up. She walked to the corner of the kitchen. There was a small wooden chest there, the kind that women used to keep linens in. She knelt down. She lifted the lid. She moved aside what looked like 50 years of folded sheets and tablecloths. At the bottom of the chest, wrapped in a piece of blue oilcloth, was a thick bundle of letters. Ethna lifted them out. She placed them on the table. She sat down. My mother kept everything Kamhi sent. 25 years of letters. From 1953 until Kamhi stopped writing in 1978, the year she died. My mother read them aloud to me when I was a girl. Then she died and I read them to myself. Then I got too old to read them, and now I just keep them the way a person keeps relics of a saint. Imani could not breathe. You have her letters. All of them, child. All of them. There are 38 by my count. The last one came 2 months before she died. Imani's hands were on the edge of the table. Ethna untied the bundle. She slid one letter out from near the bottom of the stack. The paper was the same onion skin Imani had seen the day she opened the envelope at the cottage. The date at the top was January 8th, 1959. Ethna unfolded it. She put on her glasses again. She read aloud, Mary. I am writing to tell you that Adaora has gone home. She left in December on a Monday morning and on a ship out of Pier 88. I went down to see her off. I held her face in my hands. I told her things I have never told another living soul. I told her I had known before she left that she would have a granddaughter someday. I told her that the granddaughter would come to Achill, that the cottage would know her, that my own home would receive her in a way I will not be alive to receive her myself. She thought I was mad. She told me she would write to me from Lagos. She did not believe me about the granddaughter. But Mary, I tell you, as I have told you before, I know things in the way our mothers and our grandmothers knew things, and what I know is this. There will be a girl. She will come from across the sea. She will have her grandmother's eyes. She will be in a kind of trouble that is not really trouble. She will need a place. The cottage is the place. When she comes, Mary and I know she will come. Perhaps not in your lifetime, perhaps not in mine, perhaps not in your daughter's. When she comes, treat her like a daughter of the parish. Treat her like a daughter of the house. Treat her like blood, because she is blood. The way Adaora was blood to me. The way some women are blood to other women across oceans, across generations, across whatever the world wants to put in their way. Yours in the long line of women, Quimhe. Ethna stopped reading. She folded the letter. She placed it back on the bundle. She took off her glasses. She let them fall against her chest on their chain. She looked at Imani. My mother read me that letter. Ethna said when I was 13 years old. She made me promise to remember it. She made me promise to live long enough. Ethne, I almost did not. There was a cancer when I was 64 that the doctors said would take me by Christmas. I told them no, not yet. There is a girl coming. Imani started to cry. She did not try to hide it. I beat the cancer, child. Spite alone, I think. I told God, not yet. I have a promise to keep. He listened, the old fool. Imani laughed through the tears. Ethna reached across the table. She took Imani's hand. She put the small blue ring back into her palm. She closed Imani's fingers around it. Wear it, child. You have nothing to be afraid of in this parish. You are home. The bundle of letters sat between them on the wooden table. 25 years of a friendship written across an ocean. A young Nigerian woman in Lagos. An aging Irish nurse in Brooklyn. Two women who had between them raised a granddaughter neither of them had been able to hold. Imani read the letters that morning. All 38 of them. Ethna sat across from her the entire time and did not move except to refill the teapot twice. The letters told a story that had been hidden in plain sight for 70 years. They told of how Kawimhe had not stopped writing to Adaora when Adaora returned to Lagos. They had written every month for 20 years. Kemhe had sent Adaora medical books from New York. Adaora had sent Kemhe small drawings of Lagos of her children when they came of the brick house she and Chuka had built. They had been godmothers to each other's lives across an impossible distance until Kawimhe's last letter in October of 1978, posted 3 weeks before her heart finally stopped. Kawimhe had written to Mary Gallagher about every one of those letters from Adaora. Ethna had been right. The whole story had been here in a wooden chest on a farm in Achill all along. The last letter Ethna had from Kawimi was dated October 11th, 1978. It was very short. The handwriting was almost unreadable. Mary. I think this will be my last. The doctor came on Tuesday. He says weeks, not months. I have made a small arrangement with the bank here. There is a sum set aside in my will for the granddaughter when she comes. It is not large, but it is what I have. I have asked my solicitor to keep it in trust until claimed. She will come, Mary. Tell Ethna. Tell Ethne to wait. I love you, old friend. I love you across all of it. Your Kawimhe. Imani folded the letter. She put it back in the bundle. She placed her hands flat on the wooden table. She looked at Ethna. There's a fund. Yes. Kame left a fund. Father Ryrie knows. He has been trying to find the solicitor's record since you arrived. There has been a small holding in a New York bank since 1978. The interest has compounded for 48 years, child. It will not be a fortune, but it will not be nothing. Imani thought of the half-rebuilt roof, the chimney, the men who had come up the hill in the storm, the 11,700 euro that had been almost enough to finish and was now not enough at all. She thought, Kawimhe, you knew. She started writing again that week, differently than before. Not in fragments, not in scattered poems that lived only in her notebook. She began to write a long sequence, 45 poems, a book. She wrote about Kawimhe in 1939, lifting the hearthstone with her husband on the night before he left for the war. She wrote about Cathal on the road in Germany. She wrote about Kawimhe on the cliffs above Keem Bay in 1937, in the field of gorse when a young man knelt and slid a small blue ring under her finger. She wrote about a young Nigerian woman cleaning floors at St. Vincent's Hospital in 1956, taking night classes, eating cold sandwiches by herself in a basement break room, until an older Irish nurse sat down across from her and asked her name. She wrote about her grandmother in Lagos, the brick house, the wedding photograph, the granddaughter who would not be born for another 50 years. She wrote about herself. The poems came out of her the way water comes out of a broken pipe. She wrote in the cottage. She wrote at the parish house. She wrote in Ethna's kitchen, with Ethne knitting in the chair across the table, both of them silent for hours at a time. Saoirse Byrne read the early drafts. She read them in the back room of the library at lunch. She read them and did not speak for a long time. Then she said, Imani, these are not poems. These are a covenant. Imani did not know what she meant. She wrote down the word anyway. Covenant. Later it would become the title of the book. She submitted the manuscript at the end of October to a small literary press in Dublin called Saltlight. The editor, a woman named Maeve, called her 3 days later. Maeve had read the manuscript twice. Maeve said, we want to publish it. We want to publish it before Christmas. We have never moved this fast on a manuscript before. We are moving fast on this one. Imani sat down on the floor of the parish house kitchen with the cordless phone in her hand, and she did not say anything for a long time. And Father Ryrie, passing through with a basket of laundry, said, good news, child. They want to publish it. They what? They want to publish it. Father Ryrie set down the laundry basket. He sat down on the floor beside her. He did not say anything for a long while. Then he said very softly, Kawimhe, you old devil. Imani laughed. She laughed and laughed. The first weekend of November, on a Friday afternoon, a taxi from Westport pulled up at the bottom of the lane that led to the cottage. Imani was on the roof. She was helping Fargal's youngest son, a boy of 19 named Chian, lay the last of the new slate. She had a hammer in one hand and a length of copper flashing in the other. Her hair was tied back with a piece of twine. She had a smudge of mortar on her cheek. She heard the taxi door close. She heard footsteps on the lane. She looked down. 2 figures were walking up the path. A man in a long dark coat. A woman in a navy raincoat with a scarf wrapped twice around her neck. They were carrying small overnight bags. Imani stood very still on the roof. She did not move for a long time. Cian noticed first. He looked down. He looked up at Imani. That your folks? Yes. Should I? No. Stay. Don't go anywhere. She climbed down the ladder, slowly. Her hands were not shaking, but they were not steady either. She wiped them on her work pants. She walked across the wild garden. She walked through the gate that Fargal had rehung the week before. Her parents had stopped at the edge of the path. They were looking at the cottage. They were looking at her. Her father put down his bag. Her mother put down her bag. For a long moment, none of them moved. Imani's mother had aged. 3 months. 3 months had aged her 3 years. There was a softness around her eyes that Imani had never seen before. There were shadows underneath them. Her hair, which had always been pulled back tight, was loose at her temples. Imani, her mother said. Mama. We did not call. I'm sorry. We thought, it's okay. Your father did not want to give you the chance to say no. Her father, who had not said anything, yet looked away. He looked at the half-finished roof. He looked at the chimney that Fargal had rebuilt. He looked at the wild roses still growing along the south wall. Then he looked at his daughter. He said in a voice she had not heard from him since she was very small, you are working on a roof, yes. You are repairing the slate, yes. Your hands. He took her hands. He did not let go. Your hands are like a stonemason's hands. Imani looked at her father. She did not say anything because she did not know what to say, because she was suddenly desperately 18 years old with her father holding her hands in the cold November air on a hillside in Ireland, and there were no words for that in any language, not in English, not in Igbo, not in anything. Her mother stepped forward, slowly, as if Imani were a bird that might fly away. She did not try to hug her. She did not try to apologize. She had learned in 3 months of silence that she did not get to do those things first. She reached up. She brushed the smudge of mortar off Imani's cheek. Your grandmother used to do that, her mother said. I know, Mama. You have flour on your face, O Malicha. You have flour. You have flour. She did it every morning before school. I know. Imani, come inside, Mama. The kitchen of the cottage was not finished. The walls were rough. The floor was newly cleaned but not polished. There were 2 folding chairs and a small wooden table that Saoirse Byrne had given her from a junk shop in Castlebar. There was a single oil lamp on the windowsill. The fire in the great hearth was burning low. The kettle was on the crane. It was an old way of doing things. Her mother stood in the doorway. She did not move. Her mother was a woman who had grown up in Onitsha in Nigeria in a small house with a clay floor. Her mother had not spoken about that house in 25 years. Her mother had built a life of stainless steel and granite countertops and central heating, and that life had been important to her, and Imani had thought for most of her life that her mother had built that life because she had stopped wanting any other life. But her mother was standing in the doorway of a stone cottage in Ireland, and she was crying, quietly, without sound. It is like the house I was born in, her mother said. Mama, it is exactly like it. I didn't. I came in this house once before Imani, 60 years ago. I came in this house every day of my childhood. The walls, the hearth, the way the light comes through the window in the afternoon. Her mother closed her eyes. I did not know I missed it, she said. I did not let myself know. She walked finally to the great hearth. She knelt. She put her palm flat on the new flagstone where the chamber had been opened and resealed. She stayed there for a long time. Imani's father stood by the door. He did not move. He was watching his wife. He had the patient, cautious face of a man who has been married to a woman for 30 years and knows that there are some moments where his only job is to bear witness. Imani's mother stood up. She turned. She looked at Imani. Show me, she said. So Imani showed her. She showed her the leather ledger set on the mantel under glass that Saoirse had cut to size. She showed her the wooden rosary hanging from a small hook by the door. She showed her the tin box empty now of its jewelry kept on the shelf as a memory of itself. She showed her the small black and white photograph she had set in a frame propped on the mantel of 2 young women on the steps of St. Vincent's Hospital in 1956. Her mother stood in front of the photograph. She did not move for a very long time. She picked it up with both hands, slowly. Mama, it is my mother. Yes, it is my mother in New York. I have never seen this photograph. I know. She did not have any photographs from those years. I asked her once. I was a child. I asked her, Mama, was there nothing left from when you were in America? She said there was a photograph. A friend took it. I do not know what happened to it. Her mother's voice broke. It was here, Imani. It was here. It has been here. Imani's eyes filled. Kawimhe took it, Mama. She kept it. Ethna has the negative. There is another print Ithni says that she has had in a Bible since 1958. She is going to give it to you tomorrow. Her mother sat down on one of the folding chairs. She held the photograph against her chest. She did not say anything. She did not need to. That night, Ethne came up to the cottage with a casserole dish and a bottle of red wine. She stood in the doorway with the dish in her hands, and she looked at Imani's mother, who was sitting at the small wooden table with her hands wrapped around a teacup, and Ethne said, "You have your mother's mouth, child." Imani's mother looked up. "I'm sorry. Your mother had the kindest mouth in 2 hospitals. I have seen her photograph for 30 years. I have just never said it to her face. I am Ethna Gallagher. I am 81 years old. I have been waiting in this parish for 68 years for one of you Adesanya women to walk up the road. And here you both are." Imani's mother put down her cup. She stood. She walked across the room, slowly, with the careful uncertainty of a woman who has not been hugged by an Irish farmer in her lifetime. Ethna set down the casserole. She opened her arms. Imani's mother walked into them. The 2 women stood there in the cottage doorway for a long moment crying. 181, 156. Both holding a thread that had been laid down by women neither of them had been able to keep alive. Imani watched from the table. Her father beside her reached over and took her hand. He did not look at her. He just held her hand. Father Rairi came after dinner with a small leather Bible of his own under his arm. He sat by the fire. He took out a pair of reading glasses. He found the page. Imani had asked him 2 days before to come read. The book was open to the first chapter of Ruth. Father Rairi read aloud. His voice was old and clear and steady. "And Ruth said, Entreat me not to leave thee or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go, and where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest will I fall, and there will I be buried." He closed the Bible. He looked at Imani. "Your grandmother underlined this, you said." "Yes." "She put the underline there for you." "Yes." "She knew you would need it." "Yes." Father Rairi looked at Imani's mother. "Mrs. Adesanya," he said, "do you know what your daughter has done?" Her mother shook her head. "She has built a church without walls. She has gathered a congregation of women who have been all of them separated by what would have ended a smaller story. Your mother, Kawimhe, Ethna's mother, Ethne, this girl, you. The line of women in this room going back and going forward is one of the great gifts of the parish I have been the priest of for 16 years. And I have buried a great many people, Mrs. Adesanya. So I know the difference between an ordinary life and a covenant." He paused. "Your daughter has chosen the covenant," he said. "I would not stand in her way if I were you. Not anymore." Imani's mother lowered her face. She wept, quietly, the way she had wept at her own mother's funeral 4 years ago in Lagos with no one there to hear her, except herself. This time she was not alone. Imani's father put his arm around his wife. He held her. He did not say anything. He had never been good with words. He had been good with hands, with diagrams, with the things that could be held and measured. He looked across the fire at his daughter. He nodded once slowly. Then he said in his quiet engineer's voice, "Imani, yes, Papa, your mother and I were wrong. Papa, no, listen, we were wrong." He took a long breath. "I do not understand poetry. I have never understood poetry. I wanted you to be safe. I wanted you to have a life that I could understand. I thought if I could not understand it, you would not be safe in it. I confuse those 2 things, Imani. I confuse safety and understanding. They are not the same thing. They have never been the same thing." He looked at his hands. "This cottage will stand, Imani. I am an engineer. I have looked at the walls. They are over 150 years old. They will stand for another 150. The stonework is exceptional. The foundations are deep. The hearth is true. He looked up. If a thing is built well, it does not need to be understood by everyone who walks past it. It only needs to be built well. It only needs to keep its shape under load. Your life is built well, Imani. I see that now. I should have seen it sooner. I am very sorry. It was the longest speech Imani's father had ever given in his life. She did not say anything. She got up. She walked around the table. She put her arms around her father from behind, the way she had done when she was 4 years old, and he had sat in the kitchen reading the Sunday Globe. He covered her hands with his own. He held them there for a long time. Imani's parents stayed 3 days. In the morning of the second day, her father walked the perimeter of the cottage with a measuring tape and a notebook and made detailed sketches of the chimney, the roof line, the south wall. He wrote in the notebook in careful pencil. He had questions for Fitzgerald. He had questions for Kian. He had questions for the man who had laid the new flashing. He spent 4 hours at the cottage. He drank 3 cups of tea. He laughed once at something Fargal said about a builder in Castlebar, and Imani realized she had not heard him laugh out loud in over a year. Her mother walked with Ethna. They walked the coast path to Keem Bay, the cliff path Keem had walked with Cathal in 1937. They walked slowly because Ethna was 81 and her hip was not what it used to be. They walked for 3 hours. They came back at dusk, both of them red-cheeked from the wind, both of them holding small bunches of late heather. Imani's mother was carrying, when she came back, the second print of the photograph from St. Vincent's, the one Ethne had been keeping since 1958 in her own family Bible. She did not speak about the walk. She did not have to. There are some walks that women take with other women that do not need to be reported. On the third morning before her parents left for the airport, her mother sat with Imani at the small wooden table. Her mother said, "I'm going to tell you something, Omalicha, and then I am going to leave, and I am not going to ask you to come home with us." "Mama, listen." "Yes. When my mother died 4 years ago in Lagos, I did not let you come to the funeral. I have told you that this was about money, about school. I have let you believe that for 4 years. It was not about money. It was not about school." Imani waited. "My mother told me the last time I saw her that you would leave us. She did not say when. She did not say why. She said, 'Chinelo, my granddaughter, is going to fly. You will not understand. You will be angry. She said, when she flies, do not break her wings. Let her go.'" Her mother's voice was flat, direct. Igbo, when it was direct, was the most direct language in the world. I did not believe her, Imani. I thought she was old and dying and confused. So when she died, I did not let you come to the funeral because I was afraid. I was afraid that if you stood in Lagos at her grave, she would whisper to you what she had whispered to me, and you would hear it, and you would leave us. Her mother's eyes were dry now. She whispered it anyway. "Mama, she left you a Bible. She left you a ring. She left you a friend in Ireland with a cottage. She left you everything you would need, Imani, to leave us and to be safe." Her mother reached across the table. She took Imani's hand. "I am not going to ask you to come home, Imani. I am going to ask you for one thing only." "Yes, Mama." "Let me come back." Imani looked at her. "To Akil, to Echo, to this cottage, to the woman who waited for you, to the place where my mother is somehow more present than she has been for me in Boston for 30 years. Imani held her mother's hand. "Come for Thanksgiving, Mama." "I will. Bring Papa. He has already asked me about flights. Bring a turkey." "I do not know how to cook a turkey." "I will teach you. Ethna has a recipe." Her mother laughed. A small, real, complete laugh. The first one Imani had heard from her mother since she was 12 years old. The laugh of a woman who had finally, after 30 years, set something heavy down. The book Covenant was published the second week of December. Salt Light printed 2,000 copies for the first run. The dedication was a single line, "For Adaora and for Kimhe, who left a light on for someone they would never meet. The first review came out of the Irish Times. The reviewer was a woman who had been reviewing poetry for 30 years. She wrote that Covenant was the most arresting Irish debut since 1995. She wrote that it was the work of a young woman who had walked into Irish literature the way Coimhe had walked into the Atlantic dark in 1953 with absolute and ungovernable certainty about where she was going. A second printing was ordered before Christmas. A small American press picked up the rights in January. A literary magazine in Lagos translated the title sequence into Igbo and ran it across 2 issues. Imani's mother bought 12 copies of the book and gave them to every woman she had grown up with in Onitsha, including the cousins she had not spoken to in 22 years. Father Ryrie called the parish house in late January with news. The solicitor in New York had finally, after weeks of searching, located the trust Coimhe had set up in 1978. It was modest. The original deposit had been $15,000. The compounded balance after almost 50 years was just under $83,000. It was not a fortune. It was, however, more than enough to finish the cottage, to install proper plumbing, to bring a power line up the hill, to put in the wood-burning stove that Imani had been dreaming about, to buy the small piece of adjacent land that Ethne had been pressing her to take. And there was something else. There was enough left over after all of that to begin something. Imani knew the moment Father Ryrie told her about the trust what she wanted to do with the rest. She founded the Adora and Coimhe Foundation that spring. It was small, 2 scholarships a year, both for young people in West Mayo who wanted to pursue an art form that their families could not afford to support: writing, painting, music, sculpture. The board was Imani Father Ryrie Ethne Gallagher Saoirse Byrne and a young Lagosian woman named Ada that Imani's mother put on the board from her side of the family. The first scholarship was awarded in May to a 16-year-old boy named Oisin from a fishing family in Disowned who wanted to be a poet and whose father had been planning to send him to a vocational school in Galway because there was no money for a writing program. Imani gave the scholarship herself at a small ceremony in the parish hall. She said only one sentence: "Some hands are meant to give, some hands are meant to receive. Today is your day to receive, Oisin. The day to give will come." The boy cried. His mother cried. Imani's mother in the audience, who had flown in from Boston for the ceremony, also cried. A year passed. The cottage was finished by the following October. The slate was new. The chimney drew straight. The floor had been laid with the original flagstones scrubbed and reset by Imani and Sheehan and Farargal over the course of 4 weekends. The kitchen had a small green Aga stove and a deep porcelain sink that Imani's father had insisted on shipping from Boston. The window frames were painted the soft Irish blue called Drying Day, because Ethne had said when shown the paint card that no other blue was permitted. Imani's parents came for Thanksgiving in late November. Her mother cooked the turkey with Ethne's help and Imani's. They burned the gravy. They laughed about it. They served it anyway. Father Ryrie came. Saoirse came with a quiet young schoolteacher she had begun to see in October. Farargal and Cian came. Siofra Walsh came with a tin of shortbread. Eamon Keneally came from the pub. Brid Father Ryrie's housekeeper came with 3 loaves of brown bread. The cottage was full. The fire in the great hearth was high and steady. Imani's father carved the turkey at the head of the small wooden table. He had been practicing, he said. He had watched 7 YouTube videos. The carving was, he announced, structurally sound. Everyone laughed. After dinner, when the dishes had been cleared, Imani went out alone to the stone bench her father had set into the south wall in October. The bench faced the Atlantic. The November sun was setting over the water in a long, low band of rose gold light. The stars were beginning to come out behind it. Imani sat down. She had her grandmother's leather journal on her lap, the original one, the one she had carried out of Boston on the morning of her 18th birthday, with $300 in a Bible she did not yet know was in her suitcase. She opened it. She had been writing for the last few months on the very last pages. She had a single line she wanted to add tonight before the year turned. She uncapped her pen. She wrote, "Some hands are meant to give. Some hands are meant to receive. Today, my hand was both." She closed the journal. She held it against her chest. She looked out at the Atlantic. Two rings on her right hand caught the last of the sunset, the turquoise from her grandmother, the blue from a young Irish woman in 1937 in a field of yellow gorse on the cliffs above Keem Bay. Two stones, two women, two oceans crossed. She thought of her grandmother in Lagos. She thought of Kauai in Brooklyn. She thought of Ethna, who was inside the cottage at that moment, sitting in the chair closest to the fire, with Imani's mother on a low stool beside her, the two of them looking through the bundle of letters, both of them old enough now to belong to each other. She thought of all the women she did not know and would never know who had loved someone they would never meet. The mothers and grandmothers and aunts and friends, the women who had left photographs and Bibles, the women who had hidden jewelry under hearthstones, the women who had said on their deathbeds, tell her the ring came from a woman who loved her grandmother. She thought of every young girl somewhere in the world right now, sitting on a bunk in a hostel with a suitcase she did not pack and a note she did not want to read. She wanted to say to that girl, "You are not alone." Somewhere in the world, somewhere in the past, somewhere in a stone cottage on a hill, in a kitchen in a city you have never been to, in the soft quiet of someone's last days, a woman is preparing a place for you. A woman is leaving a Bible in a closet. A woman is hiding a ring inside a tin box. A woman is writing out a letter to a parish she will never see again and asking the priest to keep it safe. The light is on. You only have to walk toward it. You only have to dare to open the door. The wind shifted. Behind her, the cottage door opened. Her mother stepped out. She was holding 2 cups of tea. She handed one to Imani. She sat down on the bench beside her daughter. She did not say anything. She did not need to. The two of them sat on the bench. They watched the last light go out of the western sky. The stars came up. The Milky Way ran from one horizon to the other the way it had on Imani's first night in the cottage 15 months before. Imani took her mother's hand. Her mother held it tight. Inside the cottage, the fire burned. The voices of the people who had come, the priest, the librarian, the 81-year-old farmer with her bundle of letters, the stonemason, the publican, the young schoolteacher rose and fell in the warm dark. Imani's grandmother had said it once in a kitchen in Brookline more than 10 years ago. Rings know things. Rings know where they need to go. So do cottages. So do letters. So do girls who are kicked out at 18 with nothing but a suitcase and $1 in their pocket, and who are brave enough even when they do not feel brave, even when the doors close behind them, even when the wind is hard and the road is long, and the night is just beginning to walk toward the light that has been waiting for them for 70 years by name.